And welcome to Habs Unfiltered, Season 5, Episode 182. I'm your host, Blaine Pudvang. I'm joined now by my co-host, Matt Smith.
Good morning.
And hipster Treg Wilson.
Morning.
For those of you who are not watching us on YouTube, Treg has gone full black rim glasses, beanie cap, and IPA t-shirt. Still no pants.
Pumpkin spice latte
Pumpkin
No, God, no.
spice.
that he
Pumpkin
created,
spice IPA.
that he made
God,
himself. That he made himself.
Gluten-free, fair trade. So, today's episode, well, we all know what we're going to be talking about here. The Kotkaniemi offer sheet and subsequent Dvorak trade. So, why don't we just dive right into the KK offer sheet that was not matched? And Bergevin's only press statement, his only public statement on this has been, and I quote, "Carolina has used a tool available to them in the collective bargaining agreement, and we accept that decision." That's it. That's the quote. That no other word has been said. The Canadiens' social media accounts have not released anything more than Kotkaniemi has not been matched. There's been no farewell videos. There's been no good luck, no nothing. It has been dead silent. So we're going to start here. Matt, why don't you give us your thoughts on the whole soap opera?
So from what I've heard on the response, I believe that they're going to have a media availability on this. I believe it's on Monday, from what I've been hearing. I since the start, this has just been one gong show. It started on Saturday, right before I went to work, and it's just been a gong show all week. I had a feeling that they were going to wait to the last moment, just like Carolina did, and kind of make them sweat a little bit.
Yeah, but they didn't even say anything. There was
No.
nothing in social media about will we or won't we, like not even a word about it.
Yeah, and it really did get down to the last, say, 30 minutes or so. But when it comes down to it, I think we kind of saw this coming.
Oh yeah.
Kotkaniemi saw the money and he took it. He saw the dollar signs, his eyes got big and he ran to it. At the end of the day, Carolina can say all they want about they got the player they wanted and they used this tool to get him and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, I don't think they actually wanted the player. I think they just wanted to make the Canadiens sweat a little bit. And now they've got a overpaid forward on their team.
I agree. He is definitely overpaid.
Skilled, we'll get into that in another segment, of course. But at the end of the day, I think that yes, I would have liked to see the Canadiens keep the player. I did like Kotkaniemi, and I know he was a fan favorite. I can see the skill level, and I can see the increase in skill level. And this was his year to make that next jump with especially with Danault out of the picture. But at the end of the day, it's a business and they're looking long term. They're looking at guys like Caulfield. They're looking at guys like Suzuki, and they took the package.
What about you, Treg? What's your thought on this portion of the soap opera?
We kind of, Blaine, I think you called it last year, or the year before. I think you called it with the Aho offer sheet. You said that they were going to probably offer sheet Kotkaniemi in 2 seasons. I think that was a couple years ago, if I remember correctly. I didn't think they were going to match from the start. I'll be honest with you. I thought the 6.1 was too high for what Kotkaniemi has done. Everyone knows I was a supporter of Kotkaniemi. I liked Kotkaniemi. I thought he'd be a good 2C for the team. I even going into this year, I even said that this is the year. This is Kotkaniemi's year where you can't put any blame on the organization if he doesn't succeed. You know, like last year, you could say, well, you know, even though our friend Jason Paul put out a good thing stating Ducharme did try to give him more offensive minutes when he was slumping. So this whole myth that they were burying him is kind of not true. When he was in his slump last season, he was getting the more offensive starts to propel his offense. He also got more minutes under Ducharme. Problem was he got 17,000 wingers and never got a consistent group. In the end, I think the silence by the Montreal Canadiens was golden. I think that was more of a fuck you to Carolina than anything else. It was them saying, we're not playing your game. You did what you wanted to do. We know why you did what you wanted to do, but we're not going to come on and say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We're not going to tell anyone what we're going to do. I don't think Bergevin, two things were going on. I think Bergevin was after Dvorak regardless of whether or not KK was going to leave or not.
I agree.
So the Dvorak thing was I think gonna happen regardless. Now that Kotkaniemi's gone, it just had to be sped up, and that's where he kind of had to overpay. And I mean, we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
To get what he wanted. So I think the silence was great from the Montreal Canadiens point of view. I think in the end, and we'll probably get into this later, I think it's now a Carolina issue. I think Bergevin kind of battered his way in, as Eric Engel said in his article today. He beat himself out of the corner, and he's not looking so bad as he did 7 days ago in this situation. That's what I think.
Yeah, for me, I mean, last week's episode, I mentioned I personally wouldn't have matched, but I thought the team might, and it looks like the team decided, you know what, 6.1 million for a guy who, at best, in a 2C role for them this year would be a 40-point center. I think they kind of projected out further along and said, well, is he ever going to become a real top 6 center for us? And apparently the answer is no, especially at that cap hit. That cap hit is a massive overpayment, massive. And you cannot convince me that Carolina thought that's a fair offer and that they can deal with that, because now, as fun as it was for Carolina and their 12 fans to revel in this Schadenfreude for a revenge offer sheet, they now have to deal with this cap. They have to, if he doesn't re-sign for a long-term deal at like $4 million, and if I were him and going for money, I wouldn't. I would say, you know what? I'm just going to wait, make them do a qualifying offer of 6.1. I mean, they signed a kid who scored 5 goals last year. And if you're projecting out, you hope he becomes a 20-goal, 50-point guy. But you're not sure, especially Carolina.
Even if he becomes, sorry.
Yeah. So he's not slated to be a top 6 player for them this year. Just isn't.
Not at all.
No. Third line tops, and that's as a winger.
Yeah. Because you've got Aho, you've got Trocheck, and you've got Stahl. Yeah.
So he's going to be on the wing.
And Neshkash is going to be fighting for a spot at center because he's originally drafted as a center.
He'll play on the right wing. Like
future offer sheeted Montreal Canadian Neshkash.
Yeah, but the complete lack of comment for the entire week while Carolina was doing these adolescent posts,
and they're still doing it, and they're still doing it now, which is ridiculous.
They are. Yeah, they were offering $20 gift cards to people.
Yeah.
So that is their shtick. That is their social media shtick, and it sells. You want to bring in more youthful fans, and younger people in their teens, especially, love this shtick, this bunch of jerks shtick, the dancing and all this stuff at the end. Good for them. That's their thing. Keep going, keep doing that. But the Canadians are a more established organization, and they have more of a boring adult view on their social media. And I mean, it's varying shades of beige with the Canadians and their social media. It's just vanilla. Sometimes they'll add in a little French vanilla just for fun. But yeah, the pure silence just says we're the adults. We're going to do our jobs, and you guys just play your little games. This takes us to, like, we kind of talked a little bit about it already, but development and drafting. Some people have been arguing about how this is a failure on the Canadiens' part to develop and draft their players. To which I respond, if it was so bad, why did another team come and try to poach the player?
Yeah.
Well, that's a twofold thing, because we know they poached him because they were pissed off at the Aho offer sheet.
Yeah. Did they cut their nose
So-
off to spite their face?
I personally don't think Carolina really wanted Kotkaniemi at that price.
I don't
At
think
that
they did.
price.
They might have wanted him. They might have wanted the player,
Yeah.
but they pushed Bergevin and the Canadians up against the ropes, hoping that they, something would come of it. And well, they got the player that they wanted, quote, quote. But I don't
they
think
wanted-
it definitely wasn't for that price.
They were looking for scoring in the offseason, and there were players who are proven goal scorers who were available that they could have traded for. But instead, they go and play these childish games. And the revenge offer sheet, I get.
Yep.
If your goal was just to piss people off, maybe come in a little bit lower, and then they would have matched and everything's fine. You still can go after your score, whatever. But now they have a $6.1 million 5-goal scorer when they were looking for actual goals.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're $1.5 million over their cap. So, mind you, Jake Gardner's rumored to be going on LTIR when the season starts. Maybe. But so how are they getting their scoring now if they're already at 1.5 over the cap?
Tony DeAngelo.
Well, I mean, take away Tony DeAngelo's assholeism. He's not a bad offensive defenseman. If we shut it right down to pure hockey, Tony DeAngelo is probably a top 15 defenseman in the league, offensive defenseman in the league.
As long as he's passing to white people.
As long as he shuts his mouth and quits being a racist asshole and just concentrates on hockey, that's what you have.
Yeah.
As for, we were at that draft in 2018 when he was drafted. Everyone wanted to, I don't care who says anything about Tkachuk. It was Philip Zadina that everybody wanted.
Most people did.
Yeah. Including the what lady.
It's true.
Friend of the show.
Yes.
Personally, I wanted Tkachuk. I said that at the thing.
Yep.
I said, but I also knew they were going to draft. It was not a secret that they were going to draft Kotkaniemi. Known for days.
Yep.
Grant McKay and Bob McKenzie were all over it.
I wrote a long article about Brady Tkachuk back when I worked for that last website just before that draft. And it was how he's a perfect fit for the Canadiens at this draft. And then they picked Kotkaniemi and you're like, yeah, okay. They picked a center. I get it. But you're right. Everybody else wanted Zadina. He is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah. They all wanted Zadina. Now, I don't think Kotkaniemi was a bad draft pick if you were picking for need. My issue is if you're picking top 5, you don't pick for need. You pick the best player available. End of conversation.
They had a choice between him and Barrett Hayton at 3.
But even Hayton was a reach when Arizona picked him, and so far he hasn't panned out for the Coyotes.
But both Hayton and Kotkaniemi were slated top 10 picks.
Yep, that's true.
They were,
yeah.
But still, it was a very weak draft for centers. It was a very weak draft for centers.
So if you're going to give crap for, you're going to shit on the team for their drafting. I mean, it's not that bad a pick to go for a center. Like Kotkaniemi wasn't a bad pick. Hayton wouldn't have been a bad pick. That's not a bad draft.
No, it's just if you're drafting top, in my opinion, if you're drafting top 5, don't draft for need. If you're drafting 10, 15, if you're, you know what I mean, outside the top 10, sure. Yeah, we need a center, take the best one available.
And that being said, drafting for need, drafting a Tkachuk would have been for need as well because they needed power forward.
They did.
Zadina would have also been a need because he was, draft for scoring. They were looking for the bigger impact on their multiple needs because the team had a ton of needs back then.
And center was a huge one, probably the biggest at the time.
And I've heard people say, why didn't they go for Quinn Hughes? To me, that would have been a massive stretch. Picking a guy.
It would have been.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't really crap on the team for the drafting, and you cannot use these Johnny come lately comparisons when at the draft on that day, it was, we all want Zadina. He is the best
Yeah.
thing ever.
Well,
Blah,
if
blah,
you,
blah.
I'll throw up the numbers really quick. So as we talked about, we'll talk about Kotkaniemi a little bit. We'll talk about Zadina numbers wise. Kotkaniemi, 171 games played, 22 goals, 40 assists, 62 points. Zadina, 86 games, 15 goals, 22 assists for 37 points. He'll be a mainstay now in the lineup, but he's not a guy that started out, say, with Detroit in his first year. But with Yzerman now in the fold and the team realizing that they're in a rebuild, they're going to be using these young guys like him, like Larkin, like Bertuzzi, etc., to really drive the offense. And some of these older guys have been pushed out.
Yeah, and for Detroit, I mean, if you look at it, Zadina's spent a couple years in the minors.
Yeah.
What would have been said had the Canadians left Zadina in the minors for a couple years? I mean, now looking back, everyone's saying, well, Kotkaniemi should have played in the minors longer. But at the time, he would have been a massive bust had he not
Absolutely,
just jumped right in.
everyone would have said that. And then even when he went down to Laval, even though he was a point of game player, they were talking negative about.
It's a constant moving of goalposts.
Yeah.
Well, that's the issue with Kotkaniemi, and I brought this up offline. For the past 2 off seasons, everyone wanted to trade Kotkaniemi for a better center.
Yeah, in a package for somebody else.
In a package for somebody else.
Yep.
Dubois, Eichel, you name it. And now that Kotkaniemi's was offer sheeted, everyone's like, oh, we're giving up our future. Well, you were all right giving up your future. And right now, Dvorak, I'm sorry to tell you, is a better center than Kotkaniemi. And I'm going to say right now, and we'll get into this later, but right now, Dvorak is an upgrade from Kotkaniemi.
Yes.
He's actually a hybrid of Danault and Kotkaniemi, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
So they kind of improved by letting Kotkaniemi go and get Dvorak. Now, 3 years down the road, maybe not, but depends on how Kotkaniemi does in Carolina, and I think we're going to get into that a little later, or we can talk about it now. I don't know
how Kotkaniemi does in Carolina. No, I want to just finish off the development thing, and then we can jump into.
Yeah. I'll have one more. I'll have one more thing to throw in Carolina as well.
And I just want to say, so I felt he should have, and we said this before in the show, that he probably should have spent a year in Laval or Finland before coming to Montreal. But he had a great camp. He had 34 points in his rookie year. You can't argue with that. 11 goals. That's not a bad rookie. And then the injuries hit the sophomore season. And I'll defend this to the end. I said this before. Kotkaniemi's biggest issue was he got too big, too quick in the sophomore season. He gained too much weight. And then he had injuries. He had the concussion. He had the spleen. He had the knee, and it all piled up on him, and he had the shitty year. This year, I think it's a little tit for tat. I think it's a little bit of Kotkaniemi and a little bit of the carousel of wingers that he had, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, which brings me to the point. This year would have been his year. They were gonna. He was basically being gifted a 2C role with steady top 6 wingers. So if his goal was to finally be given that chance, then he would have just stayed. But he wanted the money, and he apparently wanted to leave because he just said in his Instagram post, "It is time to move on. I feel extremely privileged to continue my career with the Carolina Hurricanes. I've heard nothing but great things about the team, organization, fans, and the city of Raleigh. I'm looking forward to joining the Canes and giving them the best to reach the ultimate goal in hockey."
Yeah, at the end of the day,
time to move on.
It takes 2 to have that contract.
Yeah.
He could, an offer sheet doesn't mean the player is signed. It means that the player has signed it. A player could say no to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's examples of players saying no to offer sheets in the past. I'm sure Brady Tkachuk right now in Ottawa has said no to some, even though by all reports he's being lowballed.
Oh yeah.
I would not say no to $6 million when I know I'm only worth 2.5.
Yeah.
But as we talked about on the other show, he really might back himself into a corner if he has some low play. Let's just call it that. And he might jump into unrestricted free agency when he's 21, 22 years old.
Just getting back to the development portion of the thing.
Yeah.
This was his year in Montreal to show that he wasn't the issue in his struggles in the last 2 seasons.
Correct.
If he goes to Carolina and breaks out, it shows that he was poorly developed in Montreal. Or it shows that he was poorly used in Montreal.
Correct.
Maybe not so much developed.
Agreed.
If he doesn't work out in Carolina, then you can't turn around and say Montreal stunted his development or whatever.
Of
It's
course,
just the way it is.
of course,
But of
that's
course
gonna
they
be said.
will. Of course they will. They're going to sit there and say, "Oh, well, he would have been better in Carolina if Montreal." Well, he wouldn't be in Carolina if Montreal.
But
Do I think
how
he was,
poor of
do
a
I think
player
he was
is he?
rushed? Yes. Do I think he was rushed? Yes. Do I think he's a 70 to 80 point scorer? Absolutely not. I think he's a 40 to 50 point scorer. Tops. And he
But
may
they-
not reach that.
And they clearly don't agree with the whole not developed thing because they came out for an offer sheet. As much as it's a revenge offer sheet, they still went after a player and they had that 50-50 chance of getting him. So now they got him.
At 3 times, see what he's worth.
Yeah.
But say if they want to use this guy as a winger, which more than likely it's looking that's
Oh.
the way that it's going to be.
Almost
Trocheck's a better
guaranteed.
center. Stahl's a better center. Aho definitely a better center. They gave up a winger that can actually put the puck in the net and can play a little bit of a banging game in Warren Fogle. They just let him go.
Who else did they let go?
They gave up their best goalie because he
Yeah.
wanted $3.5 million.
Right. And that's another thing. Like we talk about developing your prospects. We talk about this and that. Well, look what Carolina just did. You just had a guy that goes, he's a Calder finalist. He's like, hey, I want this much. And they're like, well, are you really worth it? And they just let him walk.
They didn't just let
So-
him walk. They let Dougie Hamilton walk
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
didn't want to give him $3 million more.
Yeah.
But they seem to have no problem giving $3 million more than he's worth to Kotkaniemi.
Yeah.
Because of the revenge aspect. That's it.
That's right.
That's the reason right there.
Yep.
To me, that's piss poor management and that's bad ownership. That's the way I look at it.
That's Don Waddell rolling over and showing his belly to the owner to placate him instead of actually doing what he should be doing and keeping Dougie Hamilton in the roster, which would have been a bigger impact than going to get Kotkaniemi.
I would have even kept that goalie because now you're stuck with Freddie Anderson and Renata, and I think they're on the other side of their careers. Personally,
I mean,
both of them were injury prone last year, so they could be down to David Ayers there by the end of the season. So,
and then you see Stevie Y's comments after picking up Nedeljkovic and saying they're asking him, well, why would they make him available? And he's like, I don't freaking know, but I just made an offer and they said yes, so I took it. So I don't know. There's some questionable decisions, especially cap wise, how they manage their cap when they let go pieces they really needed to then overspend on other areas that they didn't as much.
at all. Oh well.
So, but over to KK's use in Carolina, I mean, we've mentioned it now. He's basically the fourth, maybe even fifth center in their depth chart. So he's clearly going to be moved to the wing.
It depends on if they want Martinook ahead of him in the depth chart. That's what it comes down to. But even so, do you want to put your $6.1 million man as the 4C, getting 12 minutes a game at the most?
No.
I mean, I suspect they're going to try him on the wings with Aho and all those other lines just to see how he does. I think he's going to bounce all over that lineup just to see where he fits in. And
I think they're going to
they'll
put him. I think they're going to put him with Jordan Stahl and say this is how you play a defensive role as a center.
possible.
Sure.
Right.
Possible. I mean, if the rumor's true, supposedly Carolina has a $4.5 million long-term, a long 8 year long-term deal in place for 4.5 ABV, according to the rumors.
Yeah.
According to the rumors.
Do you think they would actually have him signed to that at
Negative.
Christmas time when he's available to sign it? If he's shitting the bed,
Absolutely not.
Time will tell. Season starting soon.
Absolutely not.
So he needs
The
to
kid-
have a breakout half season to get that deal signed.
The kid has career 23 goals or something like that.
Yeah.
What, 11, 6, and 5. So he has a career 22 goals. So he's not even worth $4.5 million at this point. At this point, I'm not saying KK is not going to be a relevant player in the NHL. Don't get me wrong. But the issue with KK is if he doesn't succeed in Carolina, and of course it'll be all Mark Bergevin's fault that he doesn't succeed in Carolina.
Of course.
Why would Carolina give him a qualifying now for $6.1 million? They did their thing, they did their dance, and they're like, oh, well, we shit the bed on this one, right? And then they're gonna say, listen, we're not re-signing you. He becomes a UFA and nobody's gonna pay him anywhere close to $6.1 million. Probably
That's
not
part
even
of the-
2.5.
For me, that's part of the beauty of the 1-year offer sheet because it doesn't handcuff Carolina.
Nope.
Yeah, they gave up a first and a third, but for the owner, that revenge aspect is totally worth it. Totally worth it.
And that's,
So-
again, piss poor ownership. That's running a business into the ground. Maybe this is why Tom Dundon has so many times went bankrupt. I don't know.
He's an amazing manager. I mean, Tom Dundon, I mean, look at the XFL and how great that is.
Mhm.
Oh, wait, no, it's defunct. Never mind. But no, I mean, they've got the 1-year deal in place and the rumored multi-year deal at about 4.5, like you mentioned. If Kotkaniemi doesn't have that super half season, like he's going to have to really show and put up points too, not just play well in games, but actually put up points, produce for them to justify signing him to that extension, especially if it's that freaking long. In January 1, say, here you go, sign this. Oh, we just signed our 2-goal scorer to an 8-year deal. Like, come on. No.
Yeah.
He's going to have to be at least at a 10-goal mark, a 30-point mark, a 60-point pace kind of deal before they sign him. And if he doesn't do that and they just kind of let that drop, that was their little behind the deal handshake, wink and a nod, trust us. So 1, Kotkaniemi gets screwed over a little bit. And 2, if that's really the case, who's to say that any RFA in the future is going to say, well, I don't know. If you want me, you make that sucker a 5-year deal, or, like they won't just sign anything handed to them from Carolina now. It hurts them business wise. So this is a far reaching thing.
And this is why I think Carolina kind of screwed themselves in this whole offer sheet thing. I totally suspect they thought Bergevin would match the offer. I really do. I really think they thought, and I think the 1-year deal was the kicker. They're going, well, he'll probably match it. It's only 1 year, right? Because then Montreal has the option to let him walk. If he comes out at next season in Montreal and he's the second line center and all of a sudden he's still only on pace for like 10 goals and whatever, and you're like, hey, you're the second line center and you're playing with Gallagher and Huffman and you're still not getting points. This isn't on us anymore, right?
Which honestly would have been more embarrassing for the Canadians, which would have added to the revenge for Dundon.
Right. Because then they're like, hey, this was your guy, this was your pick, and he's a bust. You screwed up your 3rd overall pick twice now. You screwed up,
and you
third
overpaid
overall
for him.
pick.
Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think now, don't get me wrong. I think in Carolina, I think he'll do okay. I don't think he'll be terrible. But if he's playing for 3rd and 4th line minutes, he's not getting the points to justify this a $4.5 million contract going forward. Unless he really goes off the charts, you're not having playing 3rd and 4th line. If that's where he plays most of the time, you're not having a 50, 60 point season. You're just not. Unless you go off the charts.
Yeah, the Canadians did a calculus, looked at it long-term and said, we don't think that Kotkaniemi is going to be a 20-goal, 50-point second-line center in the long term, especially at least for the next 2 to 3 years. So that makes the money way too much for us to justify keeping him. I mean, they looked at him, they said, okay, well, the compensation 21, I think he will eventually become something closer to 20, 50 point player. No. And they let him walk. They said, you know what? It's not worth the money. Let's just take a step back. But Matt, do you think that's going to be the right call, say in about 4 years' time?
Give it a little bit of time. Give it a little bit of time. Let's see how Kotkaniemi starts the season.
No,
And
no,
then
this is
maybe-
about hot takes and right away. Instant reaction hot takes. Let's go.
I think they'll be fine. I'd rather spend the money elsewhere on Suzuki and Caulfield and whoever other young players coming up within the system than overpay right now for Kotkaniemi and be pushed up against a wall with qualifying offers of that much money.
What about you, Treg?
I said on Twitter there yesterday, I said, short term, I think it's fine for Montreal. Long term, I really don't know. I think Matt hits the nail on the head, though. I think they got enough in their system and stuff like that. They have really good wingers. They can always trade for a better center. They have Dvorak now, who's going to be their 2C. I think he fits in well as a 2C. They got him signed for the next 4 years at a good value. I think they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be okay. I was fine if they matched it. I was fine if they didn't match it. Now that I think about it, it's not matched. I think they went the right way.
And they still have young guys within their system that they're going to continue to develop.
Yeah.
We've seen some really good things out of Kidney. We've seen some good things out of Kapanen. Paling's still there and still in there, and he's going to be at camp and he's going to be trying to push for a roster spot. Exactly. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, for me, the short term, they made the right call in the short term, based solely on the production levels. And yes, the trade they made afterwards replaces Kotkaniemi quite easily. But it's the long term. So if Kotkaniemi face plants in Carolina in the first year or two, there's nothing can be said about the decision that Bergevin made today. But if he blossoms into a top 6 winger even, then we're going to be listening to this crap for the next decade, just like we have with every other move ever made.
You're going to be listening to it anyway, because if he flops, Montreal didn't develop him right. If he doesn't flop, Montreal let a guy go, let our future go for nothing, basically.
But honestly, I believe, like you said earlier, Treg, if a player flops in more than one location, that's not the original team's fault.
It's not.
Like you look at
Galchenyuk. He flopped in 12 different locations. So,
but then got fixed in
fixed
Toronto.
So he got fixed in Toronto.
Yeah, where he made a beautiful assist in the Game 5 overtime.
Yeah. And had 0.5 points per game in the season. So scoring every other game,
which is why GMs were lining up to sign him, and he has a contract in pocket now. Oh wait, no, he doesn't. He's a free agent. So
I'm surprised Toronto didn't keep him.
Yeah, because they fixed him. But yeah, no, this is the path that Kotkaniemi is looking at. He's at that fork in the road now. Does he become a quality top 6 player, or does he become that journeyman bust?
I'm leaning towards the latter myself. I don't think he'll be a bust. I just don't think he'll be the top 6 everyone hoped he'd be. And looking back, if you look over his stats, like in Finland and stuff like that, was he really projected to be a top 6 guy? I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I don't know. I see Kotkaniemi as a third line guy, third line center, picking up 40 points, playing a okay 2-way game, and that's about it. Maybe a 15 goal scorer in his at the highlight of his career, I guess.
In terms of him possibly being a bust, for me, I don't think he's going to be a bust. Am I gonna fucking cheer for him this year? Absolutely not. I hope that he's a bust in Carolina. I hope he puts up 5 goals or less and 15 points. I do not want to see him succeed, because I don't want to see it all rubbed in the face that he did succeed in Carolina. So when he plays against the Canadians, I hope they play hard on him. I really do. I hope they boo him. and I'm not gonna cheer for him. It's not gonna happen. I'm one of the people that doesn't have anything Kotkaniemi related for memorabilia. I'm in no loss.
I have a jersey. I have a reverse retro jersey. So
No loss here.
I mean, I've got jerseys of all kinds of players like Camilleri, and I've got a
Camilleri
Kotkaniemi
as well.
But on booing him, I mean, here's a player. He wasn't traded away, so
No.
it's not like the when he comes back, fans will be, oh, it's a shame that you're gone. We're sorry. No, when he comes back, he chose to sign an offer sheet
right.
to go somewhere else. So
That's right. I
they're
think it's
gonna
gonna
boo
fuel
him.
the fire. Yeah, it's gonna fuel the fire.
don't boo him, but I mean,
They will.
come on.
Why not?
If you were listen, if the HMCS St. John's offered you 2.5 million, but the VDQ offered you 6.1 million, where are you going?
It doesn't matter. If I left, I would get booed. It's yes, he did the right thing
Listen.
for himself, but
Listen.
there's a price to pay for that.
Aaron Manning thinks Kotkaniemi is the greatest hockey player that ever stepped foot on the ice. And if you read
Who's
her
this
rants,
Aaron Manning?
just mute her. Just mute her now. She's been going on for the past 6 months about Kotkaniemi and how it's all the organization's fault. Kotkaniemi's done no wrong, and no matter what you say against it, you're an idiot. But anyway,
I have no idea who this person is.
I can't believe you've never seen her on Twitter because she's all over the goddamn place. But anyway, well, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, the point I'm making is
Booing Kotkaniemi.
Boo him.
oh, right. I think the whole entire, all 7,500 people that are going to be allowed at the Bell Center are going to boo. I honestly do. And I think they play like the 5th game in the season or something like
It's
that.
within the first month. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the first, like
So-
the second week of the season.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I don't care if Kotkaniemi's successful or not. I really don't. I don't care if he plays well in Carolina or if he doesn't play well in Carolina. I don't think he'll ever play up to what his contract is. So it doesn't really matter.
Well, a friend of the show, Andrew, who we've had beers with here in town a few times. You remember Andrew?
Yeah. Yeah.
He flat out said, I don't wish him well. Screw you. I'm booing you whenever I get the chance. And he got attacked for it online. Like, come on.
He did. Yeah.
I mean, he's a fan. Fans can do what they want. You pay the ticket to get into a game. If you want to boo a player, you paid $300 to get into a game. Boo away. It's your right. Especially now that especially now that you're double vaxxed, you got your card, you paid all that money, you went through all that trouble. Get in there, boo. If you cheer, cheer. You paid. It's your right.
Well, I'm not booing or cheering. I really don't care one way or the other.
I'm not one to boo in an arena, but I'm not going to wish him well. And I'll definitely be checking up on him throughout the season to see how he's doing.
If you're a Canadiens fan and you liked Kotkaniemi, wish him well all you want. But don't tell me you want him showing up and destroying the Canadiens, because then
That's right.
Are you a fan of the Canadiens or are you a fan of the player?
That's right.
Well, and that's just it. Like that's why I brought that Aaron Manning up. It's obviously she's a fan of the player and not a fan of the team. They say she's,
and that's fine.
It's like it, and that's fine. That's fine. Be a fan of the player, but don't put it to the point where you're just dumping on the team, right? I mean, I was a huge Patrick Waugh fan, but I did not go to Colorado because he went to Colorado. I actually, when they got the guys back from him, back in the days of no Twitter and that, and you don't really know much about what you're getting, but what you read here on the hockey news and the TSN, I was like, oh, this might not be so bad until I watched them play. And then I was like, okay, this is terrible. But, you know, I have no issue with people being fans of a player. It's just in a sport, it's kind of futile to be a fan of a player because I can guarantee you only rare players stay with the team the entire time.
It's a handful now, especially. And before we move on to the next segment, which is Dvorak, I just want to point out that the Carolina Hurricanes spent $6.1 million, a first and a third, on a former third overall pick who scored 5 goals last year, to become the NHL's troll artists. That's a lot of money to spend on PR. And I mean, you kind of hinted at it. They were playing some checkers. They're like, yeah, we're going to get revenge, checkers. And Bergevin found a way to turn into a chess game and punch his way out of a corner.
Well, when we look at this deal, and I know we're gonna get into Dvorak next. When we look at this deal, and we'll even call it a 3-team deal, Carolina, honestly, they're the losers in this deal.
Yeah,
In my opinion, they're on the bottom of this deal.
yeah, and here's the deal. So we're going to switch to Dvorak now. The Dvorak trade, which happened minutes after the very short and curt announcement that they were not matching. The Canadians are trading a 2022 first. It'll be the lower pick of the two. So, if it's a one's 15, one's 20, they're going to get the 20. But both are top 10 protected for this year. So if Carolina shits the bed and it becomes a top 10 pick, well, they're going to get the Habs pick. So that's this year's first. They get a 2024 second. Why 2024? I don't, whatever. They're getting a second in 2024.
Because Arizona has all the 2022 seconds.
Yeah.
That's why. They have 5 of them now.
And further on the protection of the first, if both become top 10 picks, then Arizona gets a 2023 first.
I thought they just got the higher or the lower of the two.
Well, if both are top 10, they're both top 10 protected, right? So
yeah,
they can't get either.
It's
in the write-up. It's in the write-up.
Okay.
It's kind of convoluted, but if both become top 10 picks, if both Montreal and Carolina crap the bed, then they get a 2023 pick. So either way, they got a first and a second for Dvorak. Carolina paid a first and a third for Kotkaniemi, and the Canadians end up with with Dvorak out of this deal. So yeah, like a 3-way trade. Carolina gives up a first and a third. The Canadians give up a second and Kotkaniemi, and Arizona gives up Dvorak. So yeah, it turns into a little bit of a 3-way deal. So now we're going to just get into the Christian Dvorak stuff. I see him more of a Danault replacement than a Kotkaniemi replacement.
Agreed.
But Dvorak is an actual 2C.
Yes.
So you can argue that he's replacing Kotkaniemi in this, but they did have interest in him before the offer sheet was made. So we could argue that he was going to be on his way here eventually.
Just what would it have taken to get that? It probably, and if that's the case, if it was, if it took a first, or what's called a conditional first right now, with a second, it likely would have taken. They probably would have had to swing probably like a Paling with a second, something like that.
Their salary would have had to go the other way at the same time had Kotkaniemi not left.
And that's what Arizona does. They're not a team that wants to win. They're a team that wants to make money, and that's just the way that it's going to be. And I feel bad for most of the players that end up there. So,
well, right now Arizona's in a bit of a conundrum. They're in the Gila Arena for one last year. They're trying to find a new rink to play out of in Arizona, but at the same time, they're going full rebuild.
Oh, absolutely. So, but you're looking at a team. I just brought up cap friendly really quick. You've got 3 players out of their 14 forwards that are listed right now on cap friendly that are signed for next year.
Yeah,
it's insane.
But if you're doing a rebuild, that's a good thing.
Still, they're not a team to take serious.
No. They're rebuilding. They're clearly rebuilding.
They're in a constant rebuild.
But you can argue that Bill Armstrong is actually doing it the proper way this time.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, but if you look at how rebuilds are done, you give up assets, you get a bunch of picks back. What you do with it afterwards, that's on you. But you got to collect all these first. So they basically got a bunch of firsts, a bunch of seconds over the next 2-3 years. I think it's 29 top 60 picks over the next 3 years.
Some ridiculous.
So getting a first and a second out of the Canadians for Dvorak, that's a good deal for them.
Yeah.
The Canadians getting Dvorak, it's a good deal for them. And they can thank Carolina for making the cap space.
Well, it's like we alluded to, Montreal was getting Dvorak, I think, regardless of whether they kept Kotkaniemi or not.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were to get him if they had Kotkaniemi at 6.1, which I don't think they would have. But
No,
they would have signed.
if they would have done the 2.5 deal, I think they still would have went after him. Yeah.
I still think they would have went after Dvorak, which then goes to say, well, then they weren't prepared to have Kotkaniemi as their 2C. However, Dvorak and Kotkaniemi could have switched if Kotkaniemi was playing well. Whether Kotkaniemi played 2C or 3C, he was going to have very good, reliable wingers. So it wouldn't have mattered if he played 2C or 3C.
That's right.
I mean, 2C and 3C, it's a matter of what, 2.5, 3 minutes of ice time, depending if you have power play or PK.
Which would have been made up on the power play because they would have probably given him more power play time.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. He had power. He was number 2 power play guy on the second power play unit last year. So he played almost 2 minutes of power play, average 2 minutes a night of power play time. So this was Kotkaniemi's year, whether it was 2C or 3C. Dvorak was something I think Montreal was going to have on their team start of the season, regardless whether they got rid of Kotkaniemi or not. Now it just pushes him up into now. Basically, you're absolutely right. I think he's more of a Deneau replacement, which to me is better, gives them more defense, helps shore up their defense a little bit. He was having a breakout year this year in 56 games. He had 17 goals. He was on pace for, I forget what he was on pace for points, but I think it was 50 some odd points.
45 to 50.
Yeah.
45 to 50, sure. I think it was 17-14 is what his numbers were.
17-14 in 56. Yeah.
And that's playing on their top line. He was their top line center against top opposition on a poor team that didn't have a lot of offense. So that should tell you that moving to a more offensively styled team with better wingers should increase his production.
And I totally agree. He's only 25 years old. So he's in that. This is his breakout years. 23 to 25 to me is a breakout year for a young player. And I know I like this move. I like getting Dvorak. I thought they were going to get him regardless, like I said before. And now that they have him, he's going to fit in there. Now, the question is, can Poehling step up and be a 3C? And if he can, even if he's, a 30-point guy at 3C, that's okay. That's pretty good because Poehling is not a bad two-way center either. He played pretty well in Laval going back and forth as a two-way game. Mind you, that's Laval. It's not the NHL. It's a little bit faster than the NHL. But we'll see. That's to me right now, the key is Poehling at 3C to whether or not Montreal. I mean, I think Montreal right now is a better team or just a good team as they were last year. They're just better offensively this year than they were last year. That's what I think. That's how I look at the team.
Yeah. No, Poehling is definitely is going to be the major recipient of this opening now. Evans is still there. They like Evans. They trust Evans. I think he's going to get the inside track on that role. How Poehling does in the camp, I agree, is going to make a big difference. But I see the Canadians still hedging their bets, though. You know how much Bergevin loves his veteran centers. So maybe a PTO, maybe a low-end signing.
So got Paquette as well.
Yeah, they've got Paquette there as well, who can slot into a fourth line role if need be. But I think they've got Paquette and Perreault there as the added wingers.
Agreed.
The extra guys, right?
I think in a perfect world, they'd like to use it. They like to use their drafted players. They like to use Evan and Poehling. Yeah.
And I mean, Poehling has put in his time. He is up and down. He's, he's been in the minors. He's done really well in the minors last year. And this year he's got that chance. But I've mentioned it in past episodes, how I think that his waiver eligibility, where he doesn't have to clear waivers, is going to be a hamper to him.
Yeah.
So he really, really needs to step up. But the opportunity's there. The door is open.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, Montreal still has almost $2 million to maximize Weber's LTIR. So
Yeah.
they still have a room available. I'd be leery on adding any more to that with Byron's LTIR just because he's coming back in December. But if you do get a center and you go into Byron's LTIR, then when he comes back, you can just put Paling back down into the minors, and hopefully you've garnered enough cap space through the year that you can.
As long as you're not, if you're going to ease into getting past that LTIR space that Weber's going to be giving you, as long as you're not going more than $700K into it, then it makes perfect sense. So you're looking at about $2.5 million more on, if you're,
Yeah.
that's your level. That's as much as you can go. If you're looking at being able to move Paling back down to the minors without losing anybody and then having an extra guy signed, I don't see anyone on the market that is worth that much anyway. So they should be okay. I mean, who's out there? You got Galchenyuk, who's not a center. They're not going to sign him. Is it Bozak?
Bozak's still
Bozak.
available, yeah.
Bozak would be the
Yeah.
only one I could think of that would fit that bill. Someone who can play a 3-4C role, win faceoffs, the whole thing, everything that they'd be looking for in a veteran center, he's there. So sure, I can see him being a target if they don't trust that Paling can step up. But back to Dvorak, the Dvorak trade, they targeted him as the Danault replacement because he is good defensively. He
Win faceoffs, which is
he
really important.
wins faceoffs. They really, really needed a guy who can win faceoffs, especially in the defensive zone.
Or on the power play. How many times did they lose a faceoff and then burn off 30, 40 seconds?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, sticking with the faceoff side, they gave Arizona had, let's see, I'm going to bring up his numbers here. Last year, he was a 52.1% center faceoff rate. And I'm looking at his D zone starts, which I think were fairly high. Possession metrics, D zone starts.
He already has the highest face-off percentage on the team if he was 52 last year.
Yeah.
He was 55 the year before.
Yeah.
So
Evans was 51, and I think Danault was 52 as well last year.
Yeah.
Danault
So
had
he's about where Danault was. He can do a little bit more than Danault can on the face-off dot. He gets as much D zone starts as Danault did, and he was still one of the least. I mean, on the plus minus, it looks bad, but on that team, minus 11 is good.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So yeah, he's going to be he's going to be one of their matchup centers. They're going to be giving Suzuki more responsibility, and Suzuki's faceoffs have improved. So now you have three centers who can win faceoffs more often than not, which is something the Canadians have not had in a long time. So this year, the team looks better with Dvorak versus Kotkaniemi this year. So it's not that bad of a move if you're just looking at the right here and now.
I don't think it's that bad a move. You look at the next 2-3 years either, really.
Okay. Yeah.
You at 4.5, you still have the cap space to sign Suzuki and Caulfield to some good contracts because they're both up in successive years. I think it's going to come back to how well's Kotkaniemi going to look in Carolina. If Kotkaniemi blows the doors off in Carolina and becomes a top 6 player, then you can look back and say this was a bad move by Bergevin. Again, Dvorak was coming to Montreal regardless, so Dvorak really isn't a factor in that because I still believe he was coming to Montreal whether they had Kotkaniemi or not. So,
but he wasn't here. He wasn't here at the time. He came after, and it was announced right after. So they're going to be tied together no matter what happens.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, do I think they would have given up a first and a second to get Dvorak if they still had Kotkaniemi? Probably not. I probably would have had a little bit. They probably would have had a player going to give up, like you guys mentioned early, to give up some cap relief. But Arizona saw Montreal in a position of need, in a position of it was a position of need and not a position of want, is what it would have been if they still would have had Kotkaniemi. And they took advantage of it, and any GM would have done that. So sometimes you got to lose a deal to make your team better, and I think that's kind of what Bergevin did here.
And I don't think it's really a loss. We're going to wait and see what picks end up in Arizona's pocket before we can judge. But I mean, the
I don't
value,
think it's a loss, but I mean,
yeah. But the value wise, yeah, it's a little bit more than I would have paid for Dvorak, but it's not that much more than I'm going to crap on him.
I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to bring to the team.
Well,
because they're going to put him into a role where he's not going to be the first line guy. He's not going to be playing the top end minutes. He's going to be out there. He's going to play his two-way game, and he's going to have some capable wingers on whatever line he ends up on. At the end of the day, he's a very capable center. He's going to put up more points than someone like a Deneau would. He's going to drive the offense a little bit better. And what they're likely going to do, they're probably going to put maybe somebody like a Gallagher with him anyway. Either way, he's going to have somebody that's going to be a trigger man. Yeah. So I think he's going to be just fine. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do with the team.
He's also going to help the power play. The Canadians needed they needed a shooter in the slot. And
that is 8 to 17 goals last year on the power play.
That's his bread and butter on the power play. You put him on the power play, you put him in the bumper position, and he is going to bury some goals. So they had a need at center. They had a need on the power play. He kind of fills both, especially on that bumper position. So he's going to end up probably getting around 17 to 18 and a half minutes a game, just like Suzuki. They're going to split up the power play time. They're going to split up some of the matchups defensively. So overall, it's not that bad of a move, especially when you consider his cap hit at 4.5 for the next 4 years.
And that only takes him to 29. So he's not even going to hit his 30s when his contract's up. So, and depending on how well he goes, you can go, all right, well, you're hitting your 30s. We'll give you a 3-year deal, or you let him walk, for depending on who's coming up in your system and who else you have. The key right now is getting Suzuki locked up long term, and I think that's going to be that has to be done. I think
this year
ASAP
at Christmas time when it's right now, like give it to him now. And I do think it's going to be something around an $8 million range for Suzuki.
Sure, all the power to him. He's gonna, if you're looking at him as our number one center, and he's been better every year he's played, his projection is that he's only going to get better, then give him the $8 million, sign him up.
Yeah, if you can get him at under whatever they offered Aho, and then give him a $20 signing bonus on top of that, just to mess with them. Sure.
Give him a $35 signing bonus, 20 plus 15.
Speaking of numbers, what's Dvorak's number going to be? I say it should be 20.
Weidman's 20.
Don't care.
Buy him a Rolex. Give him the number.
I think he's going to flip around and go 81.
Yeah, but it'd be more fun if he gave a Rolex to Weidman and took 20.
You should take 35. Then you got 20 and 15 added together.
Even better. Or screw it, 15. I hear it's available.
15,
we'll save some money on the jerseys.
Just got to change the name.
Yeah.
Less letters too.
Let's see what else we have here before we finish this off. Do you guys feel that all right, we kind of we covered that. We feel the team's going to be better this year. Booing, we covered. All right, so final thoughts. Treg, your final thoughts.
I think you're going to see the Habs have probably one of the best power plays in the league. That's my final thought. Just looking at the players they got with Caulfield, Hoffman, Dvorak now in there, Suzuki, Petrie, Drew in back and probably playing on the power play. Maybe I just think they're going to have a really good power play this year. And they're going to be offensively sound. Maybe. You never know. Maybe. I doubt it, but maybe.
Matt, what about you?
Just looking forward to hockey being back again. Something that we can all lean on each other for, and have some great content, and have a really good season 5.
Matt getting
Matt,
the
it would
pucks
be
in
a-
deep.
Yeah, Matt, I was just thinking, Matt always gives that, the boys are playing hard. We're going to really push this period. We're going to get the pucks in deep, and we're going to try to put some pucks in the net.
That's right.
And just looking forward to a good hockey game.
Cheers.
Wait. And pucks in deep. Did I mention pucks in deep?
Hey, the good news is we might actually be able to get together for a game this year. So that's
true. That's
a
true.
big plus. Be nice to meet up and just Treg and I can sandwich Matt with a big old hug.
Yeah.
All right. And for myself, I just want to remind our Canadian listeners that September 20th is the federal election. Be sure that you're registered. And if not, contact Elections Canada and set yourself up. If you don't want to get in the lines, you don't want to be exposed to anybody. If you're afraid of COVID, or you're afraid of anti-maskers who are still somehow a thing, you can vote by mail. It's safe, it's secure, absolutely 100% fine. Do that. The point is, get out and vote. Have your voice heard. And remember that voting is the backbone of our democracy. As members of the armed forces, we serve to ensure that right stays put, that you continue to have that right. I don't care who you vote for. Well, I do, but I'm not going to say who or why. Just get out and vote. Find something that you believe in, vote for that, but vote. Teletubbies are a thing, and they are scary as hell. Watch it in black and white. Put the Teletubbies in black and white, and then you tell me that little baby face in the sun that's dismembered from its body isn't the creepiest thing you've ever seen. And what's Tubby Custard anyway? Is Tubby Custard just old Teletubbies that they're eating? Is that Soylent Green? Creepy as shit. If you don't know what Teletubbies are, Google it. It was the bane of my existence when my firstborn was a child. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I want to thank everybody for listening, everybody for sharing, tuning in, interacting with us online. All the new followers, I want to thank you for adding us. Matt's been doing a lot of heavy lifting, getting more listeners for us. So thanks to Matt, and thanks to you.
He's the one with the 4,000, 100,000 followers.
Well, I mean, look at his face. Just
It's
look
true.
at that face.
True.
It's too pretty not to follow. Really. But yeah, I want to thank all the new listeners. I want to thank all the new followers. Interacting with you guys the last couple of days during this offer sheet time has been entertaining, to say the least. So let's keep that up. And remember, if you are talking about it, so are we.